Welcome to part 2 of the Cracking New Markets Promo Products panel session. I'm Adrienne Palmer, Editor-in-Chief of Screen Printing Magazine. And back for round 2 is Jeremy Picker, Jay Busselle, Charity Gibson, and Marshall Atkinson. If you missed the first panel, be sure to check it out in the video section of screenprintingmag.com or in the February-March digital edition. Today, we're talking about everything we didn't get to in the first panel session. So we're getting more into the details of the actual process from purchase to print to ship and everything in between. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming back to drop even more knowledge regarding promotional products, and hopefully we'll demystify some bits of this growing market.
I'm surprised they brought us back.
Yeah.
We're allowed back on.
Adrienne's very forgiving.
Thank you.
It's a much needed and wanted conversation, and you all are the go-to for this. We had so much to talk about last time. We had to cut it short. Who knows? We'll have to do a round 3, but let's get into part 2 right now. Charity, during the first panel, you mentioned there are 2 separate languages from the promo market and the apparel decorators market. I'd like to dig into this a little bit more. So maybe what are the operational differences between a screen printing shop and a distributor of promo products?
Yeah, great first question. I don't know if I've had enough coffee to really hit this one, as there's so much, but just to kind of take some foundational bits and pieces, I think where screen printing and apparel decorators come into play, if they're also selling promotional products, it's super different, simply because in the promotional products world, we have suppliers, right, which are basically the importers that bring the products in from overseas, or maybe they're manufacturers, and then they're doing the decorating. So a promotional products distributor is essentially, I don't want to say a middleman, because I don't want to diminish their value, but they are connected with the end buyer client and then place the orders with suppliers. And so they are very much the go-between, where I feel like apparel decorators, if they're in the distribution, also a promotional products distributor, they're oftentimes doing a lot of the production, right? So they're actually bringing in POs themselves. They have all the equipment and understand printing processes, but then they are sometimes just right in that, in that weird gray ground where you're also doing a lot of the work. And for most promotional products distributors, that's not the case. So right off the bat, I think that from most shops that I've seen, the PO writing process is completely different. When you're taking an order in a shop, you have very different, the work orders are just written up completely different too. So if you're coming into the promotional products industry, I think there is a very distinct difference between just the operational side of things and who does what where, and also how it gets done. What information goes on a purchase order versus what information goes on a work order, and understanding those 2 different things can, I think, really determine the success or failure of a potential person that's coming into the promotional products industry. So that if I had to teach you or tell you to learn one very specific thing when you're coming from print and apparel into promotional products, it would be to learn how to write your PO right.
Now, is that something that maybe you just get some training from someone who's already doing it, or is that just experience? You have your first one and okay, I'm in it and I understand the differences, or how can someone really get into that and learn?
I mean, I'll let everybody else answer just really quick. I think I would say training is paramount. Find somebody that is doing it well and pay them to train you, or ask them to train you. Of course, if you're going to pay, you're going to get better quality education. But I attribute all of my success in this industry to the fact that I was trained correctly from the very beginning. I like to call him the promo Nazi. We had to dot our I's and cross our T's twice, exclamation points, periods, double checks. We had no opportunity to do things incorrectly, or our paycheck was on the line. So 100%, instead of just kind of going at it blindly, if you don't have somebody to teach you, sign up with somebody like Promo Kitchen, where we're doing mentoring. But most of all, talk to your suppliers. They know exactly what needs to go on a purchase order. So before you submit a purchase order blank, what do I need to do? call a supplier, ask for your supplier sales rep or an inside salesperson and say, I'm writing my first purchase order and I need to know, or maybe it's not your first purchase order. Maybe you've been doing this for 5 years and sometimes you encounter problems. Call your suppliers. How can I write this purchase order? Do you have an example that you can share with me that's filled out correctly that will help me get this from point A to Z without any errors or conflict? So that's my advice, guys.
I think the
I've seen
thing
a
to
lot of head
remember
nodding.
here, yeah, that's really great, Charity. And I think the thing to remember here is that for apparel decorators, they're used to doing everything in-house. And so they might have a shortcut or a hidden language or, just as how they do it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you send the work to somebody else, they have to understand what you're doing and you're not there to answer the question. And they're really busy and they're just it's going to cause a problem if they don't get all the information. So I think the thing to remember is that you need to make your purchase order so easy to read and factual and informative that a 4-year-old or a German Shepherd can understand it, because otherwise things are going to get missed. And don't assume that what you're putting down there is correct. And I would always have the process that if you send a PO to a vendor, you need to call them and go over the PO and just make sure that they A, received it, B, they understand it, and C, that everything is okay. The ship date, your quantity, like whatever's on there is completely okay with them. And if it's not, now's the time to edit the purchase order, not in a week from now when things are up against it and we have to ship it tomorrow, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Can I add something too? I was going to say, after you call Marshall and after you call Charity, then call the supplier that you're outsourcing to or working with. And definitely do not send an incomplete purchase order thinking that you'll complete it later, because it's terrible for them and it clogs their system, and your deadline just got moved to the back of the line. So call ahead, double check, triple check, take a page out of Charity's suggestion and check in and say, hey, this is one of my first purchase orders with you as a company. I want to make sure that I understand your system. What are some of the things that I need to include? Is there anything I should not do? Is there anything, get the rundown. Most of them have internal staff that can support you and help you. And they would prefer to have that call up front than 2 days before someone's looking at a PO and the production line shuts down because they can't find your artwork. And if you talk to folks like Charity and others that are actually in a day in, day out supply chain situation, they'll tell you 40, 50, upwards of 60% of their purchase orders that they receive are either incorrect or incomplete.
80, 75, 80% are incorrect or incomplete.
What's up with that?
I know, no, and it's just people not taking time. You bring up so many good points, Jay. One of the things that you mentioned too is make sure that they have it and don't send it in incomplete, because guess what? Even if you put your order in on the 2nd, but we don't have everything we need until the 15th or the 20th, guess what? You're not in line for production. You're sitting here waiting to go into that spot. So all of a sudden, I call it earning your margin. You mentioned calling to follow up. There's a reason that you can make a lot more money on the distributor side, because you can earn your margin. And that means making sure that you're calling the supplier and making sure that they have your PO. And like you said, making sure that they have everything that they need to produce that order and that they interpreted your order correctly. And super important is realizing that all suppliers are they have different sizes of operations, they have different equipment, they have different numbers of staff, different education levels of staff. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but the larger the production facility seems to get, you realize that's a ton of factory skilled workers. And sometimes English is their second language, or, it's just very different. So don't assume that when you're sending in a purchase order, it's coming to a salesperson, or that there's always the same set of eyes. That might pass through 15 people on its way to get printed. And so no credit card numbers on PO, it doesn't always need to get on the purchase order. Don't over infiltrate your purchase order with information, because that's going to go through 15 or 20 hands on the way to get the stuff out the door. And you can't assume that the person that needs your information in accounting is going to get that from a purchase order that's on the show floor to production with your font colors and all of that. So just so much, just yeah, make sure that they
Yeah.
got it, make sure they understand it, and understand that every supplier is different as well. We all have different ways that we produce.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest learning curve for me, is the terminology in screen printing. Work orders. For 9 years I always used work orders, and then going to the promo that they called PO as well. My staff sent POs to Alpha and SNS. So that terminology of getting them used to work orders, POs, and that terminology from the supplier was a big learning curve. I think one of the toughest things, and why a lot of people don't get into it, is that diversity of supply, or the suppliers with the information they need. And they're not going to, most of them aren't going to offer that up. You would think when you have a new client, you would say, hey, we would love for you to give it to us like this. Instead, you give them what you know how to give them, and then they come back to you, that's wrong, I need this and I need this. And it's frustrating on both sides, but someone needs to just say, like Jay was saying, ask them how I can submit it to make it most streamlined. A lot of suppliers make you send the PO to one email and then the artwork to another email. Well, I attach my artwork to the order, so why don't you forward it to the art department? There's a lot of things that you would think is common sense, but their CRM, the way they're taking in orders, is a certain way. And like Charity's saying, you don't know who's on the other side of that computer receiving that. So having your CRM taking those notes, this supplier likes to work this, and this way. Here's your emails for contact for your sales rep, for orders, for rushes, for art. Like, everyone has different emails. And so I think that has been the biggest thing for bringing on new people to my team, is all those details should go into your CRM. So that way, when someone new is on your team, they can go there and they can learn themselves. That way they're not frustrated, and then you're not going to miss an in-hand date. But yeah, having so many different suppliers, it's brutal sometimes of how many little details that you have to really double and triple check to make sure your order is accurate.
Yeah.
And let's also talk about shipping. There was I don't know if you guys saw this, but over the weekend, there was a really great whole Facebook discussion on what blind shipping is, right? And so is blind shipping that you're not putting the vendor's address as the ship from, or is blind shipping meaning it's in a blank box? Right? So that was about what do you want? Right? And so the person who posted that, what they wanted was a blank box. So that vendor isn't like marketing to their client. But of course, they just said blind shipping, which to me has always meant I'm not putting my information on the return address as the shipper, right? It's going to go into a box that the items come in, right? And so it's like, you have to like really make sure everybody understands what you mean. And just because that's what you call it doesn't mean that's what your vendor calls it. And so it's all about being clear with the expectations that you want. So if you're not clear with that, how are they ever going to hit that? It's a moving target unless you tell them and explain them what you want, and then also follow up on it to make sure they can actually do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Totally
makes a
makes
lot of
sense.
sense.
Love it.
And just because you want it that way doesn't mean that they're prepared to do it that way,
True.
or that they will do it that way, or
Right.
or that they'll do it that way for free. So,
Yeah.
these are those discussions that you have to figure out. And it's another reason why I love what Charity said about earning your margin. Imagine all of the production processes that we go through as apparel decorators, but we're in control of it. So now you're going to give up all of that control to people you've never met on the other side of the country. And you're like, oh, okay, we're going to give them, this is going to go great, right? And it's like at every step, there's a potential for a total flame out, boom, gone, order done. Forget a detail, forget something that, is critical to the process, and you literally missed your deadline. So mistakes and misinformation, and to Marshall's point, lack of clear communication is the recipe for disaster. And that's why so many decorators think this is going to be easy, and it's not easy.
It can be easy though. I mean, once you get the hang, I think that they're like having this panel is so important to understanding if you're going to jump in with both feet and expect it to go perfect, you know, without doing a little bit of research and laying down a good foundation. That's when things like you're just throwing yourself into the fire unnecessarily. But taking the time to get that education and taking it one step at a time. What do I need to know? There's a ton of stuff we need to know, but let's start small. Let's, you know, pick maybe 1 or 2 or 3 core products that you want to start focusing on selling, and find a supplier through referral, through what have you, that you can work with, that you know that you can count on, that you can learn with, you know, those 2 or 3 separate suppliers. You can understand, okay, how do I write a purchase order? The other big thing is pricing. We have pricing on our website, but then we have an FAQ section, and that's going to tell you where the setup fees, the run charges, the over and under, and all the little idiosyncrasies of other charges that are going to show up on your purchase order that maybe you don't know about. They're kind of hidden. They're not really hidden, but it used to be at the back of catalogs, paper catalogs, and that would have all of that information, and we don't have that anymore. So, understanding where to look for that on suppliers' websites, and also order processing. I think that's the other thing, is you guys on the apparel side of things have your own CRMs, your own decorating technology and order entry systems and ERPs, and suppliers, we're lucky to have any in our industry. Some suppliers have nothing, some suppliers have a ton, but for a distributor, there's, you know, Sage, ESP, Distributor Central, Common SKU, pretty much 4 core order entry systems. And that's also key, knowing how to search for product, because all of our products are in those databases. And it will save you so much time if you learn that there's one place to look for all of this stuff. And then there's, you know, education available to help you place orders within those systems that have templates for your POs that can kind of simplify this. And everyone is different or right or better for the right kind of right size for your organization, but just knowing that that's out there, and just again taking it step by step, learning your core suppliers for certain products, finding a way to process your orders, learning how to communicate, and kind of then going from there. So like level 101 to like 201, and kind of taking it in chunks. I think that's helpful too.
In to go off of what you just said, Charity, is that tip that you just gave, that is like, you need to write that down, the listeners, because the way I used to go about it before I knew about ASI or Sage, and those kind of what would you call those, Charity? Just like
search engines. I mean, it's
search engines. Yeah. So I'm good at sourcing. So I'm finding websites that have a mug. Well, I always lost those orders, especially when it was bid situation, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to this website, not having a clue that they're a distributor marking it up 40%. So for probably 2 or 3 years, I would lose every promotional product order I had. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm trimming my margins like crazy and still can't win. Well, it took me a salesperson interviewing for a job at my company to introduce me to what ASI was, and that you could actually get 40% off this listed price. And that was a game changer, because I'm like, well, that's why I haven't won any orders, is because I wasn't going through the right channels to say, all right, my price is marking it up on the distributor's price, making it way more expensive than going to Discount Mugs or any type of website. So that getting in and going to that search engine and learning the pricing structure, that's one of the biggest educational things, because what you see on the website is completely different.
So
Yeah.
I would like to throw this out there. I want everybody to get out a pen or a pencil right now and write this down. Promokitchen.org. I want you to go.
What was that, Marshall? I'm sorry, it was cutting out. I couldn't hear you. One more time. It was just a little.
Yeah, promokitchen.org, please.
ORG.
I'm an ex-chef. Jay and Charity are still chefs. There is a fantastic mentorship program where somebody like Jeremy could be matched up with an industry pro to mentor them and teach them all this stuff, because that's what the whole Promo Kitchen's about. It's about solving problems, and you can learn from people who know exactly how to do this and avoid 2 years of not making money.
That's
So
funny.
that would be an excellent place to start. There's
Love that.
also a great Facebook page. Jay, do you know what that link is? It's just Promo Kitchen Mentors and Mentees, right?
Correct. Yeah. And to Marshall's point, the educational, thank you for the shout out. We love that. Bleeding orange, as Charity would say. But each of those platforms, to Jeremy's question about what do we call them? Search engines, platforms, some are for profit, some are not for profit, some facilitate with other associations. However they're structured, they pretty much do a really, really solid job of education. There's extra education to help onboard new distributors. So I would recommend you spend some time both as a salesperson, as a marketer, and as a business owner. And one of the things that really stuck out of my mind, and maybe we can get we're taking over. I haven't heard from Adrian in about 20 minutes, but
I'm loving this. I'm learning so much.
Not
Keep
surprised
talking.
with the four of us, right? One of the concepts that I've really been thinking a lot about over the last 3 years is the idea of the difference between a maker and a marketer. And I think that really kind of sets the framework for apparel decorators in a traditional sense, see themselves as makers. They make things, they make goods, they embellish, they decorate, and so on and so forth. And they thrive in that. They're like craftsmen or craftswomen. And then a lot of times on the promo side, it seems like we want to classify ourselves as marketers, like we're strategic and we're a little bit more on the sales and marketing side. So there is a lot of great crossover. Both have it pros and both have some cons. But I think if we just could look at this discussion through that lens and say, how much of the time am I a marketer? How much of the time am I a maker? And when should I cross over? So anyway, just a thought.
That's a
That's
great
genius,
thought.
Jay.
I love that pictorial of that for sure. The other thing that I think you mentioned, going back to the search engines, that and the organizations that power those, ASI, PPAI, for profit, not for profit. And then of course I mentioned Distributor Central, Zoom Catalog is another kind of resource like that. But the one thing is that those are investments, and the more of time, not more money necessarily, but more time that you take, and the more willing that you are to invest in your business and in those learning experiences, the more that the people that you work with are going to be willing to invest in you and your growth in your company. They know that you're professionals and you're providing better service. So to one of Jeremy's points, it doesn't really matter how much the product costs, because I know in Jeremy's case, you're not just putting a one color imprint on one location on some plastic keychain. There's thought that goes into that. So there's markup on the product, but then there's markup on your talent and the time investment that you're going to make with the creative. And that's what I think the promotional products industry lacks a lot of the time, is the creative. So Jay, you mentioned the maker component of that. When you marry the maker component with the marketing component and the product capabilities that we have with the growing imprint capabilities that we have, and you put those two together, there's a massive opportunity for that type of salesperson in the promotional product side of the industry. There's also, when you talk about education and the organizations that are associated with the promotional products industry, there's actual degrees that you can get, right? So you can get like your TAS, your CAS, and your MAS, which is your Master of Advertising Specialties. And then on the ASI side, there's your BASI and your MASI. So there are actual training courses that you can take. There's also Live 2 as a new one. There's so much out there before you just jump in and start get educated. And then the last thing that I'll say to that point too is you don't also have to do it yourself. I know a lot of times in this case, we're trying to be the salesperson, the marketer. If you're running a shop, then you're screen printing, you're taking orders, you're the shop owner, you're doing all of these systems and processes and things. And I would say, because I learned this too late in life, there is a ton of value in hiring, right? If I know that I can charge $50 an hour for something, and I can pay somebody $20 an hour, and I can make that $30 an hour difference as income coming in that I didn't have to work for, in a sense. Now I can hire 5 people, pay them what they're worth, but then still mark up that time. Now I'm making that $30 per hour times 5 people. And I am not running myself ragged, working 70 billion hours a week and not being able to sleep and all that. So there's something to be said about 70 billion. There's definitely something to be said about when you're coming into the promotional products side of things. look for somebody that you can work with that can maybe start part-time and work themselves into a full-time position and grow as you grow in that area. Don't try and do it all yourself, because you'll burn yourself out. You'll be frustrated. Just that's my cautionary tale, is it's tempting to want to just be it all, and you're not going to find success that way. The most successful people that I've seen have learned how to just hire really well and guide. So
Where were you 5 years ago, Charity?
Yeah, right.
I needed to hear that 5 years ago for sure. And now
I was working 70 billion hours.
There you go.
Trying to do it all.
No, I love it. I think like looking into all of these different areas, one statement that I educate everyone in my company is no one is looking out for Amber. No matter how good of a partner you have, we've had great partners, done a lot of business, but at the end of the day, they're looking out for their interest, and don't always assume. Now, if they surprise you and they find out, oh, inventory is coming short, or, hey, I remember you ordering this project, last year. Other than that, like, expect that no one cares really about your project. That's where you get the right information. You have the good communication. You make it as easy as possible for them as the maker not to fail. Set them up, and you're going to save so much heartache. And there's been vendors that we thought, oh, they're looking out for our best interest. And eventually, when it's stressful for them, they're going to make the decision that best suits their needs. So if you can just take that mantra going into it, you're going to have a lot less heartache. You're going to have a smoother ride, knowing that you are your only person that is being looked out for and no one else is. Again, if it happens, that's great. And I know the speed of trust, you have to be able to trust people that they're going to come through, but always be cautious, to make sure that your customer is the most important to you at the end of the day.
Agreed.
Wow. That's question one.
I know. I was kind of looking at my notes and like, well, we're covering a lot more. No, I mean, I think it's good to know that this isn't an easy thing to do, but there are resources out there to help you. So you really have no excuse, because there's somebody who's going to mentor you. There are resources. There are things that you can do to make this work. So we've talked a lot about, time-saving tips, working with suppliers. There's obviously a lot more detail, and probably could talk on and on about all those things. But in terms of your customers, how do you turn your current print clients to promo buyers? What is that switch? Jay, you're nodding your head. You can go for it if you want.
I thought a lot about this question, and I thought, where was I 20 years ago with a small family business, both doing apparel and promotional items, and figuring out that balance. And what we figured out early on was that your end buyer, the client, doesn't really care what you call yourself. Kind of like what Jeremy says, that they have their own issues, their own updates and staffing issues and marketing and sales and human resources and whatnot. So they're focused in their world. They don't really care too much whether you called yourself a screen printer or an apparel decorator or a promotional product distributor or an advertising consultant. They just want their killer sweet swag delivered on time. So when you can pull those things together in a way that it shows that you have a well thought out plan and that you're pushing beyond just logos on stuff, and you think about messaging and you think about targets, what we realized was that we could surprise them at the end of an order and include something that they weren't expecting. And it was the best way for us to start talking about future promotional product campaigns was at the point of delivery of their last project, and surprise them with something, whether that's an umbrella, whether that's a tumbler, whether that's a sign, something different that they weren't expecting with their information on it, not yours. And so we started including headwear, and we started including things that we could personalize, that we could get and do ourselves, or that we could get in a quantity that was reasonable that we could share. And I'll tell you what, that was the on-ramp for us. That was the rocket ship, because they always stereotyped us as, oh, you're the t-shirt guys. Oh, you're just a screen printer. And it's like, just a screen printer? I save businesses for work, baby. So We realized that by showing them, giving them the tangible thing, the product, that it put your brand in their hand. Have you heard that before? So that was the difference maker for us, as we started including and surprising and delighting early on, by rather than just try to tell them, oh, and if you want pens, don't forget me, kind of a thing. It was like, no, we'd already crossed that road by adding value at the close of the previous sale, surprising them with a product that was branded for them. And that's what built our business. And afterwards we were like, wait, there are a lot more people out there that want something like this that didn't want a t-shirt or a hat or a hoodie. So the two complement themselves so well. And when you do it together, when you do it well, the profit margins go up, your business is happy, your clients are thrilled because they can go to one person that they already know and trust and say, yes, I do need that. Yes, I do have an event. Yes, I do trust you and I want more. So for us, that's where the marketer and the maker do actually go hand in hand and work well together.
That's great, Jay. Just listening to you talk about that, I'm remembering a phrase that I coach my clients about a lot, which is that your preparation determines your outcome. So if we think about our markets that we're serving, and let's just say that for this company, that in my conversational example, that they do a lot of stuff with gyms and CrossFit trainers. Okay. So what problems do they have right now that you could help them with that are in the promo world? Right. So it's you doing the research and saying, you know what, I bet a yoga mat or a water bottle or a thank you card. They have thank you cards that are just like a credit card that you could get with your brand information on it as a thank you. Or you could do a workout from home box. Instead of a work from home, you could do a workout from home box where you're putting a bunch of products in there. And as fulfillment folks would be putting all that together, you could be sourcing things to put in there. So what are the challenges and the problems that you could be solving for your clients with promo items that goes beyond just what you can manufacture and produce in-house? And you could be bringing that in, and guess what? You're solving more of your customers' problems. And it's really about identifying in advance through questions how you can be more relevant to their business. And this allows you to serve them better. And so it's really about understanding their journey, their problems, their customers, what they're going through. And I think a lot of times as apparel decorators, and Jay, you mentioned it, it's all about labels. We get in our brain that we're a t-shirt printer or that we're an embroiderer, and that's all we think about, right? So if what's the phrase, if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? So it's like, what can we do to help our customers and get past the label that we're screen printers? And I think this all starts with preparing ourselves to understand our customers better through questions and through being more consultative in our approach.
I would 100% agree with that. There's a couple of things that you said and a couple of things that I've heard that kind of fit exactly with what you're saying. So one is, it's not about the product, but it's not, people don't care about the product. They care about what the product does for them. And so it could be a pen, but that's not the purpose of the pen. The pen isn't even to write at that point in time. It's to deliver a message, right? So it's the same thing with a t-shirt. It's not just a t-shirt. It's proof of participation. You were there at an event. You participated. It's almost like a trophy. It's a badge of honor. What is that?
Part of the
tribe. Yeah. So what is that product actually doing besides just being delivered and using as a pen to write or a hat to wear and guard from the sun? It's saying something. It's telling a story. And so you have to think past the product. The second thing that you said, Marshall, was about having a conversation, right? It's understanding your customers' actual needs. And it's not about what they think they need. It's about what they actually need. And so I know in promo, sometimes a number of the conversations that I've had, the saying comes out, we're on your team, but not on your payroll. We're the marketing consultants and the marketing departments that you don't have to pay a salary to, but we consult with you and are just as invested in your brand brand and the outcomes for your brand as you are yourself. And that, you know, when you're in a niche, especially, you mentioned if it's just this particular group of people that you tend to work with, you understand that market. You know, if it's veterinarians or if it's gym owners, there are a unique set of challenges that each industry faces. And when you get down into that niche and you really understand what they're facing, what they're going to be facing in a few months, which is really, really important, and how you can proactively work in front of them to not only help solve those problems, but help them stand out. So the thing that you were saying too, there's some intuitive products, right? Like if you're talking with gym owners, you definitely want the apparel piece. You definitely want water bottles because they're working out. You want the yoga mats and stuff like that. But in order to help people stand out and be different, we have to think differently and do things that wouldn't necessarily make sense at first glance, because you want to get the opportunity to tell that story. So what are people who are working out, if they're not working out at that moment, what do they do the rest of their day?
Eat
What
tacos.
products can exactly eat tacos? Like, so what other products can you give them to help infiltrate the rest of their lives that might not be fitness related, but will keep that fitness company on top of mind the other 22 hours a day that they're not working
Right.
out, you know, or sleeping, things
point.
like that. So facilitate stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that helped me think differently. That kept my, you know, it made me stand out. You know, it's like all of a sudden in a sea of yellow, blue is what's going to get noticed. Go for blue. Be that standout thing that helps them be completely different than anything else is pitching to them. And so I think when we're talking about shops and decorators, it's very operational. Promotional product supplier companies are the same way. Our job is to get a PO, print products, ship products. So we're not always marketers on the supplier side of things. We're not always thinking forward to what the client is going to need. And so that's my challenge, I guess, for apparel shops, you know, and decorators trying to come into this thing is get out of the operational mindset and into that marketing mindset where we're having those conversations about what does your event calendar look like? What have you noticed so far? What's coming down the line? And take the consultative approach, just, you know, tell that story and be in more communication. It's not as efficient, but it's definitely a lot more effective.
Well said.
Jeremy, did you have anything else that you wanted to say about that, or just agreeing with everyone?
No, I love it. I think, you know, that consultant role, it does take time. And so one thing that I learned from one of my virtual mentors, he's no longer with us, but I was like, well, I'm going to fire my bottom 80% of the clients and just focus on my top 20. Well, you're always going to have that ratio of your 20%, you know, something around there that's doing 80% of your business. And so this guy talked about, well, instead of firing, because you're always going to have to end up firing people, how do you talk to the masses in a group setting and then reserve your personal time for that 20%? And I think that it can get overwhelming when you're trying to treat everyone the same, especially on a consultant basis. But knowing that your top customers that are now printing with you, there's maybe that opportunity for the promotion. So focus on them, even if that's just to start, focus on them and their needs, because my company used to be event based and it was that one t-shirt order and we wouldn't see them again for a year. Well, over time, like Jay was saying, being proactive and showing them, hey, we also do this, or your item would, or your design would look great on this item. And just like you can be a one-stop shop for other people, for your project managers, now you can do 8 projects with one person versus 8 separate projects, 8 different project managers. And so I think, one, to differentiate yourself as a operational, you know, printer or screen printer, that's going to set you apart locally, that the next guy isn't going to be, or the girl's going to be offering that. But then once you show them you care and really go from being a catalog driven company to a purpose driven company, that all because, like Charity was saying, you're a gym. Yeah, you have your core products, but what is your purpose? You know, stop looking in catalogs, stop looking for what everyone else is seeing, and really offer them things that their audience, because CrossFit is very different, you know, from seniors, you know, at the pool doing little push-ups. So categorizing everyone is not going to help in the long run. And if you are limited on time, like we all are, just take your focus in the promotional space, for your top customers, because that is going to be a great way for you to learn the industry, but also make it worth your time and investment. But we use casual consultants all the time that, yeah, my product does not, I'm not charging you for my time. That kind of comes with our product, versus you're comparing someone else that is just giving you a cheaper product and they're not doing anything after they deliver that.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that you just mentioned, Jeremy. I think you've nailed it spot on. And then to add to that too, you're talking about just demographic, differences between people. Not all gyms are created equally, but the other common theme between everything is that people are people. Before we're customers, before we're prospects, we're people first. So think of your prospects and clients as people. Think of your current customers as people. What do these people need when they go home? And if you're looking even, in different industries and things like that, you mentioned it, once you can nail it down and you have people kind of drilled down into certain subsets and certain behaviors, if this, then that, it makes it, super easy to be efficient in those things. And then you can, work with your core suppliers and get a core, processes as well. It all simplify everything. So you can do a lot more in a lot less time.
Great information. I think it is important. It's almost reminding me of what Jay said in the first panel when someone kept coming in saying, hey, can I get business cards or can I get pens or something? And you kept saying no. And so you're losing your own business and then another opportunity. So if you have the ability to be that one-stop shop, look into it, work toward it, and you'll be keeping your current customers and then hopefully gaining even new ones and more. So we're wrapping up just based on time. Final thoughts from anyone? And also when you do that, also share with our listeners and our viewers where they can find you for more information. I'm gonna go around. Marshall, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. If you're just getting started, I would recommend do some research and look into things that you probably could market to your customers already. And then I would find a good, better, best. I would get some samples made so you know what it's like to order from that company. You know what their process is. Just do some for your own company. Just do the whatever the minimum order is, so you can understand what it's like to work with them. And because you don't want to make that mistake when your customer reputation's on the line with working with a vendor for a customer on a big order, and then you find out that they can't deliver or they've got some hiccup or some weird thing, right? Don't put yourself in that situation. Just start slow and learn, and don't be afraid to say no. Sorry, I don't really know about that. It's okay, I can research, but I would suggest doing this. It's okay to say no when things look weird, because you don't want to set yourself up for failure. So just make sure you're very clear about what you're doing. That would be my final thought. And you can reach out to me if you want to learn more about me at AtkinsonT-shirt.com. That's my website, or shirtlabtribe.com. Would love to see you guys join that group. Thanks.
Thanks, Marshall. Jeremy, you're next on my grid.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, especially for those that haven't made that leap yet, is let go of a little of that control. You can still be in control without everything being under your roof. And that's one thing that Marshall was saying earlier is a lot of print owners, they see themselves as that, and then they can't look outside of their four walls. And I'm like, what is important for your business? And I think that's the biggest thing that I've seen, just being friends with a lot of shop owners, is that they kind of understand when you tell them that they're missing out on all this, but at the end of the day, they wanted control. And some people have taken years to actually come around of me bombarding them and showing them what we're doing for other customers. Is you have to let go of some of it, but the outcome by letting go is going to come back in tenfold. You're going to have all of this extra revenue that is not in-house, and it's only going to support and grow your company, versus at the end of the day, you can only print so much in-house, even if you're running 24 hours a day. You hit a ceiling unless you have to get a bigger bigger building, more equipment, but how can you get bigger and have more margin by the same size right now? And that's just by offering new products that your customers are already buying. They're just not buying it from you.
Thanks, Jeremy. And where can our viewers find you? LinkedIn, social media, everywhere.
LinkedIn mainly. I love LinkedIn. Yeah, JW Picker on Twitter, Amber Creative on all social media channels, but I love LinkedIn the most, and that's where I try to share the most helpful information, industry focused.
For sure. Jay, what about you? Final thoughts?
Final thoughts would be, besides tacos make everything better, to remember that you have an opportunity to do a self-promotion. So like Marshall kind of alluded to this, figure out your processes by doing work for yourself first, and figure out, like, if you were going to try to figure out the best marketing campaign ever, do it for you first, and then point that toward your top 20 customers or clients, and create that kit, create that, merch program. And it gives you the opportunity to really test the waters, partner with your suppliers in the true sense of the word. They're not just vendors, they're partners. Most of them are really smart and do want to see you succeed, because they want to earn your business as well. So I think that the opportunities are so sky high, especially right now. If you've made it through the last 12 months, get ready for a big rebound and add this into your mix and take some, just, it's cliche, but crawl, then walk, then run. And you're going to find yourself scaling without having to invest in new equipment, like Jeremy said, or new space. You can add to your bottom line in a very profitable way. So I would highly recommend you do it. Jump in, be smart, lots of reading, lots of mentors, and you can find me at LinkedIn.
Thanks, Jay. Perfect. And last but definitely not least, Charity.
So I'm going to go back even further and talk about like fundamental process. Very first and foremost, before you jump into promotional products and take this route, figure out why you want to do it. Is it just to make more money? Is it to grow? Is it to whatever? Get your goal set first and your sight set on what you want to achieve before you take your first step. The second thing I would say is, once you decide, yes, I want to do this, talk to your current customers and see who they are using for their promotional products purchases. Who are they buying from? Why are they buying from that person? What do they love? What do they hate? What would they change? And I'd ask a pretty significant number of people so that you can get a really good temperature reading, a really good barometer of why people are buying promotional products in the first place and what they love about the people, where they don't love, different things like that. So then when you do jump in, where there is a need or a deficit. So you're not going to have to compete against every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Jane and Joe and Jill out there. From your research that there is a lack here. And if I fill this need, I'm going to, from the beginning, be setting myself apart, and I will be a very unique addition to this place, because I heard over and over and over that a number of people are buying products from X, but they really hate this part of it. So if you go in there and you're strong with the part that they hate, and you can fill in the other things well, you're going to be setting yourself up for massive success right from the beginning. And then the last thing I would say along with that is when you're talking to those people and you're asking them, where do they buy promotional products? Who are they buying from? What do they like? If you're seeing commonalities, or even if you're not, again, we're talking about order from yourself, order from that company. Have a sister or a brother or a friend or a whatever, place an order so that you can see, again, for yourself with your new, soon to be new competitors, what it's like doing business with them. And, just make sure that when you are setting your processes up, that you're going to prepare for success. And remember, if you think small, you're going to play small, and you're going to continue to be small. So give yourself something to grow into, give yourself a goal to grow into, and just set yourself and your processes up for success from the very beginning. And even if you have to, the other thing I would say is the other thing I would say is, if you hear the same names consistently, reach out to those people too, because a lot of the best people in promo will collaborate instead of compete. So I know that I could call Jeremy tomorrow and say, hey, I need help with this. Like, this is what I'm facing and this is what I want to do. I'm a screen printer and I really want to grow into. And I know Jeremy and a number of other people that are super successful will be willing to help collaborate and get me where I want to go. So don't be afraid to use people who you would normally think of as competitors as somebody you can collaborate with. It might be somebody that you can send your promo orders to and they can send their apparel to you too while you're both learning. So there's a cool thing and it might grow into something bigger and more. I'm Charity. I am done talking at It's Me Charity G on Instagram. And I also just started a new coaching company. You guys are the first people to hear about it, Paper Plane Coaching. So ready for takeoff at paperplanecoaching.com.
Fantastic. You heard it here first. Thanks for sharing with us, Charity. Thank you all for sharing amazing insight. Learned a lot. Everyone here who's watching, you have contacts. And obviously this industry is very open to sharing, and there's a ton of resources out there. And if you have more questions, you can reach out to me or any of the 4 panelists. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us again.
Thanks. Yeah.
Round 3.